temporary protected status designated for the country of El Salvador. And this gives the dates of the last time that it was done. Temporary protective status is a temporary status given to eligible nationals of designated countries who are present in the United States. The status accorded to nationals from some countries affected by armed conflict or natural disasters allow persons to live and work in the United States for limited times. Currently, persons from 10 countries, Haiti, El Salvador, Syria, Nepal, Honduras, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, Nicaragua, and South Sudan have temporary protected status. About 320,000 people have TPS as of 2017. History. In 1990, as part of the Immigration Act of 1990, Congress established a procedure by which the Attorney General may provide temporary protected status to immigrants in the United States who are temporarily unable to safely return to their home country because of ongoing armed conflict and environmental disaster or other extraordinary and temporary conditions. On March 1st, 2003, pursuant to the Homeland Security Act of 2002, the former Immigration and Naturalization Service of the Department of Justice was divided into three different agencies of the Department of Homeland Security, namely U.S. Immigration and Customs, United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, and U.S. Customs and Border Control. As of 2017, the authority to designate a country for temporary protected status rests with the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. Deferred enforced departure is a status similar to temporary protected status. It is active for Liberia through March 31st, 2018. Liberians previously were able to hold temporary protective status. By 2017, the temporary protective status program covered people from 10 countries, namely the ones that I mentioned earlier. About 300,000 foreign nationals as of November 2017 were recipients of protected status under temporary. Some have been in the United States since the 1990s. They are able to gain temporary protected status, which would allow them to obtain work authorization over 18 months since the designation was made, in some cases for many years. Protection of 2,500 immigrants from Nicaragua under temporary protected status will terminate January 5th, 2019. Temporary protected status for the largest group, Salvadorans, and the second largest group, Haitians, will terminate in 2019. An extension to July 2018 was granted to 86,000 Hondurans who have not been required to leave the United States since 1999. Announcements about extensions are expected in March 2018. Late initial registration is available for those who did not apply during the initial registration period of a country's temporary protected status designation, in addition to meeting all of the other requirements for temporary protected status in one's own right. A late initial registrant must establish eligibility to file late by showing that one or more of the late initial filing conditions existed during the initial registration period, and also within 60 days of filing and late initial temporary protected status application. Children and spouses of temporary protected status eligible individuals cannot derive continuous residence or continuous physical presence from the parents or spouses for late initial filings. Temporary protected status applicants are eligible to receive an employment authorization document based on temporary protected status only if they have a pending or approved initial form I-821. Category C-19 appears on employment authorization documents issued with the initial form I-821 is pending approval or denial. Therefore, receiving a C-19 employment authorization document does not mean that an applicant has been granted temporary protected status. Category A-12 appears on employment authorization documents issued after the initial form I-821 has been approved. During the period for which a country has been designated for temporary protected status beneficiaries may remain in the United States and may obtain work authorization. A person in temporary protected status is considered as being in lawful status as a non-immigrant. Temporary protected status does not provide a path to permanent resident status, green card, or United States citizenship. Temporary protected status is typically designated for between 6 and 18 months at a time for each country. Once that time is up, the status expires and its beneficiaries revert to the same immigration status they maintained before temporary protection status, unless that status had since expired. Accordingly, if an immigrant did not have lawful status prior to receiving temporary protected status and did not obtain any other lawful status during the designation of temporary protected status, the person reverts to unlawful status upon the expiration of the designation. These are the countries. El Salvador, initiated in response to 2001 El Salvador earthquakes. Temporary protected status of 263,280 Salvadorans. Haiti, initiated in response to the 2010 Haiti earthquake. That, I believe. Honduras, initiated in response to Hurricane Mitch in 1998. Nicaragua, initiated in response to Hurricane Mitch in 1998. This is the letter that was done for President Bush for El Salvador. This is the first time that we hear about this, and of course after that, amazingly enough, it wasn't reported in the actual media at any point to let us know that this was continuing on and on and on. And the media, amazingly enough, decided that it wasn't important to actually inform the citizens that these people were actually legally here because of what the president himself started. How dare they? And then on top of that, we have Democrats yelling racism. We have Republicans saying this is all about law and order. And yet, all along, it actually was that the government knew exactly where these people were, exactly what they were doing, and because of this, they actually had legal status here. But they can't have a path to citizenship because, amazingly enough, you can't do that without Congress. How dare they? Do not misunderstand me. I am not saying the initial declaration was unconscionable. No, what I'm saying is 17 years, sometimes as close as 2 decades, these people have been going through this hell of having to be reauthorized each time. Not sure whether or not the next president's going to sign off on it. They're in limbo constantly. They have absolutely no proof whatsoever that they're not going to be sent home in a year or two. And they have no path to become citizens. And this is done out of kindness. How in the world do you think that's kindness? We are talking about 20 years in some cases. This is unconscionable that we would allow this to happen. I can understand 2, maybe even 4 years. But after 4 years to continue to sign an order that leaves these people in limbo, in a purgatory of inability to make decisions for their life and their children, it is wrong. And our government did this. This is not a case of them sneaking in. They actually had legal status under this protected status. You can call it what you want, but our government knew, and they intentionally let these people live in the shadows, and that is unconscionable. And the fact is, we voted for these people. That makes it our responsibility. Whether you didn't vote or whether you voted at all, I don't care. The fact is, we are citizens of the United States, and this is our government, and they allowed this to go on for a decade and more. This is wrong, and it is tearing this country apart because these people in Washington did not bother to explain that this really is their fault.